Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam. Good morning. Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Today is Wednesday, April 6, 2022. And I got to be honest, the only reason I remember the date because I remember when I booked my guest, it's April 6th. Me and this date thing, y'all pray for me. It is We Need to Know Wednesdays. And we need to know that as men, I put up a post yesterday that even at 50, the impact either of a relationship, a healthy relationship with our father, an unhealthy relationship with our father, or no relationship with our father. I found out yesterday that even at 50 years old, can still have an impact. As I shared, I was writing an email to this brother and just writing about fatherhood, and I never met my father. Typing those words like definitely hit me. And so I am elated this morning to have a good friend and brother. We go way, way back. I'm not going to tell him the trivia question in the intro. We're going to show his commercial first, but I want to see if he remembers where we first met. But at this time, I want to show you this commercial from this great young man. And you have a way to support him today. Not only listen to him, but we need to support him. He's essentially a Black-owned business, and we often talk about that. And so without further ado, we're going to go ahead and show the commercial, and we will be right back with you in a couple of seconds.
I Never Met My Father is a powerful true story of brokenness, forgiveness, healing, restoration, and hope. My new book is filled with practical advice for fathers, mothers, and children. If you're one of the millions of men and women who grew up with a rocky relationship or no relationship with your father, then this book is for you. In my new book, I share my raw and honest journey, growing up in poverty, my battles with insecurity, mental illness, and depression. I Never Met My Father will teach you ways to break generational cycles of fatherlessness and put you on a pathway towards forgiveness, healing, and wholeness. For the first time ever, I share lessons learned from over 30 years searching for my father. Each chapter has action steps and a fatherhood challenge to encourage you. My journey from the poorhouse to the White House proves that there's hope for fatherless sons and daughters. If you're a father, a mother, or one of the millions of people like me who grew up without your father, I Never Met My Father is a must-read for you. Get your copy today at IneverMetMyFather.com.
I am definitely excited to have this conversation and bring this brother into the room. Just the commercial in itself. And I think the thing that just stood out to me was when he said from the poorhouse to the White House. And I'm just going to go ahead and bring him in so you all can meet him for yourself and experience the author, the youth advocate, the minister, the father, the husband, the son of Boston, former city council candidate. Let's bring into the room my good friend and brother, Eugene Schneeberg. Let's pronounce that right. I got the announcement on Alexa this morning, and you don't want to hear how Alexa pronounced it.
Alexa be like Schneeberg. Yeah. No, Jimmy, thank you so much for having me, man. I'm so blessed. Man, I'm excited for your show. I'm excited for Java with Jimmy. You're out here killing it. You've been killing it for a long time, brother, in the city, man. You've been consistent, and it's a privilege and an honor to be on with you today.
I'm the one who's privileged, sir, because though you're the type of brother that we don't have to talk, be in contact every day, but when we do, it's always building and it's always affirming. And I've watched you, sir. And so let me do a little quick trivia test. Where did we first meet? And that actually may not have been where we first met, but there are two entities or organizational names. I want to see if you remember where we met. Where did we used to work together?
Oh man, you getting me caught up now. You've done so much in the city. You've been in over the years. I've been in a few. Oh man, I can't call it. I just know
It's near.
What'd you say?
It's near Jackson Square.
Okay, not Hillside.
Remember we would.
I didn't know that. I didn't remember that. Okay, I used to work for the Department of Youth Services. Yeah.
Yep. We were at Hillside, and I remember orienting, and you were there along with the other brother. I can't remember his name, Latino brother that was real cool. But yeah, Hillside was it, and then the other.
You taking
the other entity. Yeah, that's way back. And what was the other entity that you were kind of known for working with, faith-based entity back in the day?
Straight Ahead Ministries.
Yes. Yes. Yep. Okay. So you got about a good 50%. Man, I just wanted to, because it hit me the other day. I was like, wow, we started out at Hillside.
Wow.
And so anyway, enough of that trivia. So tell us a little bit about yourself, sir, before we go into the book and everything that you've done and achieved. Who is Eugene? Because I think it's important for people to understand you and how that's contributed to your career, to your writing, and getting to a point in life, sir, where you were very real about the fact that you never met your father. And I can't wait. First of all, give me a drop dead time to end, so I know when you need to get off and probably, attend a meeting or talk to,
I'm good. I got plenty of time.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey here in Boston, because you yourself have done a lot of work in Boston and greater Boston. And so I'm not the only one that's been in it for a while. And you look 25, 28, but you kind of up a little, maybe near me a little bit. But tell us, man, about who is Eugene.
Yeah, man. Thank you, Jimmy. So as you said, man, I think my story starts. My mom raised me by herself. My sister and I, we moved to Upham's Corner when I was 8 in 1988, and not 1984. Apologize. And if you remember, if you're a Bostonian, man, Columbia Road was rough in the late 80s. So that's kind of the environment I grew up on, and just trying to survive without a father, without brothers. Just my mom and my sister trying to figure out what life was about, trying to figure out what it meant to be a man. We moved to Roxbury, Mount Pleasant neighborhood in 1988 when I was 11, and kind of cut my teeth in that neighborhood: Vine Street, Mount Pleasant, 4th Street, Orchard Park. And once again, man, it was rough in the early 90s, man. For if you was a young person in Boston in the early 90s, it was rough. And I just try to figure it out, man. I remember, there was a known drug house across the street from my house. There was a lot of violence, a lot of young people getting shot at the time. And I remember thinking to myself as like a 12-year-old, where are all the men in our community? Because I knew even at 12 years old, somehow, some way that men are supposed to protect their communities. I just didn't feel protected. I felt utterly vulnerable. I had been robbed, jumped, shot at, all kinds of stuff by the time I was 12, 13 years old. And I made a commitment at that age. I said, when I grow up and I become a man, and I didn't know what it meant to be a man, no clue. I said, I'm going to make sure that the generation that comes after me can't say about the generation before me what I said about that generation, that we would do our best. You were in the same generation, Jimmy, that we would work to protect and make it better for the young people that come after us. So I'm grateful, man. By the grace of God, I had a radical encounter with the Lord when I was 17, changed my life. And my pastor at the time, Warren Collins, he really took me in as part of his family, man, and showed me an example of what a father looks like, which is really one of the first times I had seen that, what a husband looked like. He had 6 biological children, a 7th adopted, fostered over 50 foster children over the course, him and his wife. And I was able to get a front row seat to watch how he moved and how he loved his wife and how how he loved his children and affirmed them and so forth. And so then I had a model to look at. Okay, this is what a husband looks like. This is what a father looks like. This is what a man of God looks like. I ended up marrying his daughter. And next year we'll be married 20 years. And we now have 4 children. And man, it's a blessing, brother. So yeah, that's a little bit about my story. In Boston in 2010, God opened a door for me to come to work for President Obama as the director of the Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. I had the privilege of learning and working with so many great people like you, Jimmy. And so, you know, Boston is rich with leaders. Boston is rich with organizations that care about young people and partnerships and collaboratives. And so I was able to take everything that I learned in Boston and even in Lynn and bring that with me to Washington, to the Obama administration. And there we focused on 4 areas: prisoner reentry, which is a major issue that we're still dealing with today, is how do we help our brothers and sisters successfully reintegrate back to the community. We focused on youth violence prevention. I was no stranger to that, and Boston has really been a leader in that space over the years. Hasn't quite figured it out, and really no one has, but there's a lot more room to focus on. And then we focused.
I'll just interject and say, not a room, a canyon, but go ahead.
Okay, there you go, Canyon. And then there's children of incarcerated parents, which we focused on as well. You know, my nephew's father was incarcerated for 10 years when he was growing up. Incarceration has touched my family. So I had the opportunity to co-chair the federal working group on children of incarcerated parents, and proud to say that we put $5 million in the annual federal budget to focus on children of incarcerated parents for the first time. And that's still an annual appropriation. And then lastly, we focused on responsible fatherhood. You know, Jimmy, that fathers, particularly Black men in incarceration, there's a real intersection there, right? Our people are overrepresented in the justice system. We have a long history of mass incarceration. So I really work with other leaders in the Department of Justice and across the administration to try and make the Justice Department more sensitive to the issues that incarcerated fathers deal with, as well as their children. And so we were able to do some unprecedented work with fathers incarcerated in the federal prison system, as well as young fathers in the juvenile justice system.
Eugene, and I'm going to do my best not to call you the abbreviated version of Eugene, but it's just amazing, man. And I know we're live and whatnot, but I'm just going to have a brotherly moment. It's amazing, sir, to just sit and see. And again, I've watched some things over the years, but just to hear, you got 4 kids, you've been married for 20 years. Like, where did the time go, bro? It's just amazing to hear so much work. And a lot of things stood out, but you have now a legacy that every year there's $5 million appropriated to work with children of those who are incarcerated. Like, that's major. That's not like a light feat. And so we definitely, from Boston, like I put in a couple of the posts, Boston Zone, because you may not be here right now, but we claim you always and forever. And so how did you get from what you shared in your personal story and the work? Take us on that journey of how we got to I Never Met My Father. With all that you mentioned in your past, how did it evolve into where we are today?
Yeah, so one thing I should have mentioned is that my mom, Hannah Schneeberg, was a lifelong educator. She taught in the Boston Public Schools as a substitute. There's probably some people around maybe watching who remember Miss Hannah, right? She was also probably one of the only white ladies in my whole neighborhood in Roxbury, but she served students for over 30 years in the Boston area. And I would watch her get up every single day and go to school. Underpaid, underappreciated, didn't get paid for days off, didn't get paid for vacations, didn't get paid for summers. And we struggled, man. We were poor, we were on welfare, food stamps, all of that. But one thing I learned from her, many things I learned from her, was just how important it is to sacrifice your life for children. And so that's always been a commitment I have, is that it's so important to pour into our next generation. Fast forward, man, just watching her and the trauma that she's experienced as a single mother, doing her best to raise me, gave me a great admiration for mothers, and single mothers in particular, and the sacrifices that they make for their children. You have to get the book, but, you know, from a very young age, I started asking questions about my father, like, Ma, who's my father? And she would tell me bits and pieces, but I could tell that it kind of hurt her as she was telling the story. She didn't want to tell me everything. And because sons don't want to hurt their mothers, I wouldn't ask often. You know what I'm saying? I would give her that space and not ask often. But because it was so in my heart, I would ask. And she told me his name. And then first thing I thought, this is how old I am, Jimmy, and how old you are. What did I do? I looked in the phone book, right?
White pages.
Yeah. Some of y'all, your listeners, your millennials, they don't even know what a phone book is, but it was a book with phone numbers. Anyway, so man, there's my father's last name is Graham, and so there's hundreds of Grahams in Boston. And I was at 10 years old, 12 years old. I'm thinking, let me call all these Grahams and see if I can find my father. And then I thought about it. That's ridiculous. Like 99% of them are going to say, I have no idea what you're talking about. I was so overwhelmed with fear of the unknown and fear of calling. I just didn't, I just didn't call. So I would kind of repress those feelings. And then a couple years later, we'll come back again. And I'll ask you to give me a little bit more detail. My father was a veteran. He fought in the Vietnam War. He was in the VA hospital. He kind of struggled with mental illness. They didn't know each other well. But I would kind of keep looking. And then with the advent of the internet,
Yep.
With Netscape, dating myself.
Oh God.
I would look on the internet unsuccessfully for many years. And it wasn't until Bishop Thompson, at the time, we were at a prayer retreat, and I was sharing about like my heart and my hurt in a small group. And he said, I think it's time for you to look for your father. And that was a confirmation of something I had heard from the Lord. And he told me, we were talking about this early, Jimmy. He said, you need to talk to Chris Sumner. He said, a Boston icon. He said, Chris didn't meet his father till he was in his 40s. Yep. So I was obedient. I went to 10 Point at the time, and I sat down with Chris in his office, and he was gracious and shared of his story of not meeting his father till he was in his 40s. And bear in mind, I'm in my 20s now, right? And so he told me some advice. I put it in my book. He said, prepare yourself emotionally, because even if you do find your father, it's unlikely that he'll be the type of father that you want him to be, right? Like, and he shared about how he met his father. And he said to me, I'll never forget this, I'm a better son to my father than he is to the father to me. So that was kind of part of my journey. So for 20 plus years, I looked for him. We ended up hiring a private investigator. Some brothers of mine put together some money and hired a private investigator, unsuccessfully looking for this dude. All kinds of, I tried everything I could think of. It wasn't until 2020 when I heard an ad for ancestry.com. And I was talking to a pastor friend of mine who took the test. And I thought he was just like Gates. They tell you what part of Africa you from when you get your Nigeria and all that stuff. So
Did you say Gates?
Isn't that yeah, Henry Louis Gates? I thought it was like just that type of stuff, just the genealogy stuff that tell you what which I was appreciative of. Like I've never met anyone on the Graham side of the family. I never met any of my Black family members, zero. Right? I know my mom's side of the family, but zero contact with that side of the family. So I was appreciative to know, like, I'm this percent Nigerian and this percent, Senegal or whatever. But what my pastor friend from the West Coast told me is when he took it, they actually tell you who you're matched to. And out of the 10, 15 million people who have taken the test, they'll tell you you're a first cousin. This is a sibling. This is an uncle. And I'm like, man, this is perfect, because maybe if I take this test, they'll tell me I got siblings out there on my father's side. They'll tell me uncles and nieces and cousins and so forth. So I took the test. If you've never taken it, they send you a little kit, put a little saliva in, download the app, mail it back. In like 2 weeks, they'll send you your results. So, man, for those 2 weeks, I was so excited, man. After 20 years, like, am I going to finally find people on the Graham side of the family? The results come in. I pull up the app. I bring my wife in, like, babe, this is it. And I'm looking at the matches, and there's not one Graham on there. So my heart breaks, and I'm like, man, like, did my mother give me the wrong name? Like, what's going on? There's a bunch of African-American folks, which was a win for me, because I'm like, at least I'm related to some folks, and none of them were Graham. So I went to, and it actually shows you the proximity, like how many chromosomes you have in common, like who's the closest relative, and then it works its way down. My closest relative was a third cousin from New Jersey, an African-American brother, and you can message them in the app. And so I messaged like there was several third cousins. I didn't know what a third cousin was, but this one in New Jersey hit me back within a matter of minutes. And I said, my name is Eugene Schneeberg. I was born in Boston in the 70s. My father's last name is Graham. I'm looking for information on him, blah, blah. He says, now his last name wasn't Graham though, but I messaged him anyway. And he said, my mother's maiden name is Graham. And I said, oh my goodness. And he said, I'm gonna put you in contact with her. So he did, we talked. And she says, I have 5 first cousins in Boston, Grahams. And now it's getting real.
Yeah.
Grahams.
Edge of my seat listening. I'm like,
there's Grahams in Boston, and I'm related to them through DNA, right? So she gives me their names. I look them up, whitepages.com this time. Right? There's no more books. And I reach out to one. And I don't want to give away the whole end of the story, but I end up connecting with a first cousin in Boston, and we're talking, and he's like, tell me about your father, this and that. I tell him, he says, your father sounds like my uncle. And sure enough, he met all the criteria: 6'3", Army veteran, the right age. Pops had a Jerry curl in the 70s. And so sure enough, man, and then I got another hit on Ancestry that week. It was another first cousin. I was able to talk to him. He's in the Navy in San Diego. And man, I was able to find my family. Now it turns out, Jimmy, you got to read the book, but my father ended up passing in 2004. Right when I started my search, you know what I'm saying? And so I realized that it wasn't necessarily about finding him and meeting him as much as it was the journey, that 20-year journey of healing and restoration that I went on, and having the conversations and asking the questions. And to your question, writing the book, right? The book is really just a testimony to God's goodness and his healing, and through the power of forgiveness. Even though I've never met him, I've written him letters expressing how I forgive him. I've prayed for him and for my family that I never met. And it turns out I actually have a half brother and a half sister on my father's side. I've been able to talk to both of them. One lives in Boston. I have an aunt who lives on Columbia Road. And when I tell you, and a sister who lives on Quincy Street, when I tell you how many times I've gone down Quincy Street, that intersection of Quincy and Columbia Road, and passed by my sister's house and my aunt's house, thousands of times, you know what I'm saying? So it's been amazing. And it's actually, there's a quote that I use, and I'll let you jump in. It's, your greatest pain is your greatest gift. And Jim, you talked about kind of feelings that came up for you, man. The issue of our fathers is deep.
yeah,
It's so deep. It's so deeply rooted. It doesn't matter if you're 15, 50, or 65. It doesn't go away unless you address it. And so my greatest pain has been not knowing about my father. Do I look like him? I didn't have one picture of him my whole life. Do I look like my father? What was his personality like, and so forth? Where was he? Why didn't he look for me? Is he looking for me? Do I have siblings? Is he dead or alive? Is he in jail, or is he in the boardroom? I know none of those answers. And so I'm grateful now that I do have those answers. And the book really is not just my story, but I really share lessons that I've learned about, I call Lessons from a Fatherless Father. You know, I've done my best to raise my 4 children on the job training. You know what I'm saying? I didn't have an example of how do you appropriately discipline your children? How do you affirm your children? What do you do when you miss it? You know, when you overreact, how do you walk that back? How do you apologize to your children? None of that. I didn't have an example of how do you honor and affirm your wife? What do you do when you get into it with her, and so forth? I didn't see my father open doors for my mother. None of those things. So it's been trial and error. Fortunately, like as I said, I have my father-in-law, who was a great example to me. And other fathers over the years, and brothers our age who are great fathers and great husbands. And I really feel like this current generation, who many of us grew up without our fathers, made a commitment that said, if we ever become fathers, I hear this all the time. How did I learn how to be a father? Do the opposite of my father. Yeah. Do everything I wanted from my father, but I never got. I just heard that this weekend, you know, and I spoke at Bishop Jake's event earlier this week. And man, there was a line of people that came up and said, I never met my father. Mm-hmm. I never met my father. I never met my father. And so that's part of the reason I wrote the book, because I know that there's a lot of people out there that have a similar shared experience. Maybe they were raised by their father, but he was emotionally unavailable, or he was absent, or he was, unfaithful, or whatever the thing might be. But I'm excited about our generation and the generations to come, because I think there's a renewed commitment to fatherhood. I work with hundreds and hundreds of young people involved in the juvenile justice system, stemming from my time at Hillside, and a lot of young fathers, guys that became fathers at teenagers, but guess what? They stuck it out.
Yeah.
They sacrificed, they grinded, and now they're in their 30s now, and they're loving their kids, and their kids are going to middle school, and some of them going to high school, and they're sticking it out, regardless of what the situation was. So yeah.
Man, I appreciate you. I was going to say I'm going to get you, but I know it wasn't intentional. But some of those questions, as you were stating them, they still remain. And so it's so weird, because I haven't shed tears about, not knowing my father in crap. I want to say 50. Like shed tears, just, you grew up and you want to know and all of that. And so I'm going to move on just to keep us focused.
You don't have to move on, man. Hey, look, let me just say this, and I know you want to move on. You got some questions, but man, your tears are welcome, bro, and it's okay. You know what I'm saying? And that one thing I've learned over all these years, man, is men, we should cry. We should express the full range of our emotions. It's okay. It doesn't mean we're weak. It doesn't mean we're soft, and it's okay. It's healthy to express those emotions. When they've been bottled up so long, they got to come out somehow, some way. And if we don't express them in a healthy way through tears, they come out in other ways, like anger and lashing out. You know what I'm saying? And so your tears are welcome, my brother. And this is one of the things I know that I was born to do, man, is build with other brothers and other sisters who have a shared experience, man. It's not like you can go like every day just like, hey, I never met my father, and I'm torn up about that in the workplace. It just doesn't come up. So there's rare spaces to have this conversation. So I'm glad we're having it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that hit me yesterday, that it hasn't been an issue. It hasn't come up. I've just been going and going, and seeing the book and whatnot. I looked at the title and I'm like, this is going to be interesting. But it hit me yesterday, and I usually say I'm going to get folks when they make me cry on screen, but I like the perspective. To hear the words you say, your tears are welcome in this space is dope. And it really, this is one of the things that I did want to talk about, and we're going to make sure that folks have the information to get the book. And matter of fact, I just want to put it up here now in case folks can't stay on. So we're just going to leave this up here. This is where you can go to purchase the book. It may be on Amazon and whatnot, and I haven't asked him this, but get it directly from the website. My only question about Amazon, is it electronic yet? Is it Kindle-ish or?
We're working on the ebook. A lot of my people are overseas, and they're like, "Hey, can I get it electronically?" and so forth.
That was the only reason I went to go, and I was like, because I'm just, I'm old but a little bit young.
And people want the audio book too. But people don't have a lot of time to sit and read that much anymore. I would say this about the book length: a lot of people read it in one sitting, the whole book. And people have told me, like, man, I picked it up, I couldn't put it down. And so if you're one of those people that like, I don't have a whole lot of time, I'm busy or whatever, it's not a long read. It's not 300 pages. So you can bang it out in a couple sittings or in one sitting if you have a few hours.
Let me ask you this in real time. Who did you target the writing towards, Eugene? Because there's our age, there's the younger men, there's the young fathers. Was there a specific audience that you were writing to in the so many subsets of who we are?
Yeah. Honestly, I try to make it beneficial for a lot of different audiences. So one group, probably the first group, is for young and old who wrestle with issues of father wounds, right? Whether you're 8 years old and a young man whose father's not in the home, and you have questions about, your dad not being around, or, you want a closer relationship with him. My prayer is that the book would encourage a 8, 9, 10-year-old young man, young woman. But similarly, older folks, you know, you may be a father like me, but you, even though you have your own children, you're still wrestling with your own issues. But I also wanted to encourage moms as well. You know, even though the titles I never met my father, it's really a tribute to the power of strong women to raise children. And as so many mothers have done over the years, and done an extraordinary job. I had the privilege of working for President Obama, who was raised by an extraordinary mother, and so forth. So my prayer is that it gives some strategies and some insight into mothers trying to raise their children by themselves, based on my experience, some to-dos and some not to-dos.
Yeah.
There's some information out there. Young people, one of the things that I think is that if you become a parent too early or prematurely, it can make your life more difficult. And so there's some admonition to young people, young men and young women, to choose wisely who they choose to bring a child into the world. And so those are some of the audiences, Jimmy.
I mean, that encapsulates a lot of people that I know and that could benefit from this. And we'll go back to the book as well, but so much of what you talked about, Eugene, is how do you attribute the lack of fatherhood to the current state of things? And though you're not here, you keep in touch with Boston politics and whatnot, and things are very interesting still. And when you made the reference point around, we've made some strides in violence, it's somewhat presumptuous, but do you think there's a correlation with the lack of healthy fatherhood as it relates to the status of things when we talk about our young people and young men when it comes to violence?
Yeah. I was going to make a joke and say no. But no, there's not a correlation. There's a direct link.
Gotcha. Yep.
It's the root. It's the core, in my humble opinion. The reality is this. Fathers, you know, this is my shirt. Fathers protect, they provide, they nurture and teach, right? And so when a father is healthy and equipped and whole, and has the tools he needs to raise his children, he's going to provide the level of discipline and protection in his children, and structure in his children's lives. Let's be honest. Most violence is perpetrated by young men. That's just real. Now, our sisters, are not immune to it, but most violence is perpetrated by young men. A lot of that violence stems, honestly, from unresolved pain, unresolved anger. Many times it's directed, it's at their fathers, but it comes out on other people. And then, so if a lot of more fathers were in place, we would be in positions to steer our children in the right direction, away from picking up guns and selling drugs. If we were in our houses and providing financially for our children and the mothers in our lives' needs, our children wouldn't have to go out and sell drugs and to try and survive and put food on the table and so forth. So I'm convinced, and that's why I've dedicated my life to this issue, that fathers are the foundation of the family. And absent that, although our sisters do an extraordinary job and do their very best and lay it down, and they should be applauded, absent that, man, it's hard. You know what I'm saying? It's hard. If you look at the composition of most like housing projects in Boston, I'm not going to name them, but you know who they are, right? Very few fathers live in those projects, or I don't think call them that anymore. But you know what I'm saying? Structurally, there's some disincentives for men being on the leases and so forth, and we won't talk about that. But the reality is, man, a father's going to tell his son, man, you know what I mean, teach them how to walk away from a fight. A father's going to teach them, you know what I'm saying, how to that they need to, invest in the education and not in the street life and so forth and so on. So I'm excited, man. There are some good brothers in the city of Boston who are, whether it's through the street worker program or nonprofits or churches or youth ministers or whatever, who are playing some of those surrogate father roles. But I think we can do more to invest in our fathers, because I was just having a conversation with someone, and I don't want to go off track, but mentors are great. They're important, but a mentor will never replace someone's father. You know what I'm saying? And so I think it's like that public health adage, like you can either keep trying to, pull the babies out the river, right? Or you can pause, go upstream and figure out who's putting the babies in the river in the first place. And I think, going upstream is really looking at strengthening fathers, strengthening mothers, strengthening families. And that way we won't have to invest so much in putting band-aids on bullet wounds.
Let me ask you something, because a couple of folks referred to teachable moments, and though there's one sense of view was live at 9, a lot of people, the numbers prove, they go, I can see that folks go back and watch days out, weeks out. There's a teachable moment here. Everything that's been done heretofore is in the past. What message, real brother message, would you give to brothers right now when it comes to responsible fatherhood pre or pre-responsible fatherhood? And I think you know what I mean by that when you alluded to the fact of, you know, making decisions and getting ready to father or fathering prematurely. There is an ability to not father too early. There are ways that, you know, and you know, we have our different beliefs and things like that. But what is it that you would say to young men and young women in reference to intentionality about parenthood?
Yeah. I have a whole chapter in the book about that, so I'm glad you brought it up, man.
Yes, sir.
You know, there's a saying in Spanish that I learned from my brothers at Leon de Huda, the great Spanish church in the South End.
Miranda, yes, sir.
Yeah, vale esperar. It means it's worth the wait. And you know what I'm saying? I think, you know, we've all been young and dumb, and you know, we all have hormones and so forth. And but the reality is, man,
and old hormones, but go ahead.
It all hormones, but it's worth the wait, man. You know, as someone who's been married 20 years, man, it's worth. I'm a strong advocate for marriage, and the reality is this: people might be mad at me, but you know, God's design is for children to be raised in households with mothers and fathers in the context of a married committed relationship, and that's the ideal. So it's worth the wait. You know what I'm saying? There's an analogy about, you know, fire is beautiful if it's in its right context. If it's in a fireplace, man, it's beautiful. It brings warmth and heat, and you can cook with it, and it's great. But outside of its proper context, if it's just on your rug uncontrolled, it's gonna be disastrous, and it can kill you. And it's the same thing with sex, man. Sex in its proper context is beautiful, but when you take it outside of its proper context, it can kill you. And too many children are born into relationships where the mothers and fathers don't know each other well. They're not committed to one another. A child is brought into the world. Something happens where they get into it, and now there's a rift between mom and dad that oftentimes seems, you know, irreplaceable, irreconcilable. You know what I'm saying? And now we have then the victims of that is their children, right? Wow, mom and dad, I want to be with my dad, I want to be with my mom. They don't talk, they got beef, you know what I'm saying? Mom's, you know, being a gatekeeper, or mom's upset or hurt from dad, and dad's hurt, and I mean, there's so much drama that comes in when we prematurely bring children into the world. And so I would say it's worth the wait, man. Take your time, get to know your partner well. You know, is that the type of person you want to be with for a lifetime? You know what I'm saying? Because once you have a child, that's a lifetime commitment. And so I talk about that in my book, and I hope that a lot of young people get their hands on it and are able to kind of, you know, think about their future and delay, even though it's such a strong desire. But take your time; it's worth the wait.
I want to get back to a couple of points, and you'll understand and respect, and I say this respectfully, that since back in the day, you know, Brother Jimmy has evolved and embraced, you know, some things that may be outside of the traditional Judeo-Christian values. And I wanted to make sure that we both are, you're expressing your belief and research according to Christian values. And there are others that may not share that belief and believe that, you know, and single mothers are proof of that. And then there are also you know, male and male, female and female couples. And I just wanted to name that and not get necessarily into a debate, but be balanced and authentic. But another piece that you said here, and it's up here in the comments, where is it? I just saw it. When you were talking about not teachable moment. Oh, you touched on something, Gene. That's it. Please. Oh, can you talk a little bit to this? Because even though there have been some relationships and children born into not the most healthiest relationships, sir, we know that there are some dads, and let's just name two, because I'm aware of one particular recent situation where dads have utilized the child to quote unquote hurt or get back at the mom. There have been different situations where dads have really not, maybe not always, but they've attempted to step up in some cases. And so this viewer, Natasha asked, please address the fathers that have been ashamed about not being in their child's lives and hold back in being really present because either they're feeling, and I'm sure you talk about it in the book. Y'all got to get the book. Y'all got to get the book. When this comment goes away, you'll see the website to go and order your book. Electronic is coming. What is it? Audio something is coming too. But can you speak to Natasha's point?
Yeah, Natasha, great question. And that's my sister's name. Yeah, I work with a lot of fathers. I run fatherhood peer support groups for fathers. And a lot of fathers do feel kind of like some shame. They feel regret because of the distance that's between the child. I will say that most fathers, the overwhelming majority of fathers, they really want to be present in their children's life. They really want to be active. Not all, but most. And oftentimes there's just barriers to that. A lot of times it's a broken relationship, right? It's mistrust. It's somebody cheated. Just be real. Somebody cheated and now the trust is broken. And now there's such resentment that I'm like, I don't even want to mess with you at all. No communication. But then there's other mothers who say, even though we're not together romantically, for the betterment of my children, I know my children need to be in communication with their children. So sometimes it requires you, even though you're mad, even though there's those issues still, even though dad's not perfect, still understanding that your children that do need him in their life, good, bad, ugly, and indifferent. There's lessons to be learned from their father. But to Natasha's question, man, yeah, there definitely is shame. I think in my book, I have a chapter called Forgive Your Father, Forgive Yourself. And man, the issue of forgiveness is so deep. James, I don't know your whole story. I'd love to flip it and interview you on the next one. But man, issues of unforgiveness and resentment are so closely tied, in anger and all of that. And so a lot of times we see kids are angry at their fathers, but a lot of times and don't want to forgive their fathers, but a lot of times fathers can't forgive themselves. And so I talk about in the book how important it is for you, one, to forgive yourself. You know what I'm saying? And to forgive your father, right? A lot of times we're actually repeating the cycle, right? Our fathers wasn't around. We didn't know how to stick around because we didn't have that good example. We messed around and had a kid too early, and now we're repeating the cycle. So it's important that we, one, forgive our fathers, release it. I know it's not easy, but it's possible. Read the book. And then two, forgive ourselves. And then for the sisters and the mothers who are watching this, forgive your children's fathers. Forgive them. Let it go, man. That unforgiveness is a killer. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean forget. It doesn't mean just blindly move forward. Be wise in your actions, right? But forgive and release. You know what I'm saying? Because that man is half of your child. That their DNA is in them. They need to have a relationship. They need to know who he is. They have questions, whether they're bold enough to ask you or not. Like I held back from asking my mother questions for years for fear of trying to hurt her. The children probably aren't going to come and ask you a whole lot of questions so it's I advise to be proactive. Ask them questions about how they're feeling about their fathers. Ask them, do they want to connect with their fathers? Facilitate an opportunity, whether it's a supervised visit, whether it's a few times a year, whether it's Zoom, FaceTime, whatever. Take that stride. And my mother thought she thought she was operating in our best interest. Yep. All mothers do. All mothers think this decision is in the best interest of my child, and they should, right? And I'm not saying if there was abuse or anything like that you should blindly move forward. Some things, for the safety of the child and so forth. But for other things where it's just like it's just been time or whatever. So it's so important to forgive. And Natasha, I think moms can go a long way to addressing that shame, to let their father know that there is an open door, to let them know that they're welcome, to let them know that your child needs you and so forth and so on. And so I encourage people to check out IneverMetMyFather.com. You can email me at eugene@fathersforward.com. If you have questions about a specific way to how to navigate, about how do you kind of reconnect with the father of your children, or how do you walk your children through that, I'd be happy to have those conversations. Yep, there it is.
That's right. It's spelled right.
Yep, you got it.
Okay. Um, this was good for me. This was good for me. One, just didn't even realize that it was still an issue. Two, though, here in public on screen. You know, I think the tears were healthy just to just maybe resurface this in therapy and talk about it. And I'd be honored if we switch this up and you do the interview and we talk about it, whatever. I'd be honored and glad to. And it is just amazing just to see the wealth evolve or spring up. Let's take it back to the scripture, spring up in you and things that you know that were in you years ago. The other thing is, and you've probably been told this or whatever, but had you not had this experience, you wouldn't have wrote the book.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't be here today helping me. And then everybody that's been helped by reading it, and those that will read it or listen to it. So, bro, I really appreciate you coming into the room. Next time you're in Boston, we got to break bread. And what is it that you would in your closing before we get to benediction? What is it that you would say to children around at middle school, young men and young women, that may stumble upon this and are dealing with issues of not having their dad involved? We've been talking, you know, from the adult aspect. I'm sure there's a young adult teen aspect in the book, but if a parent could show a clip to their child, a single mom could show a clip to their child, what is it that you would say to the young people?
Yeah, thank you, Jimmy. If I was talking to a middle schooler, I would say when I was that age, I had all kinds of questions. I had insecurities, I had confusion, I had depression, I had discouragement. I was a mess.
Did you think it was your fault? Did you think it was your fault?
In some ways, it's not that I thought it was my fault. I thought I wasn't valuable. I thought I wasn't valuable enough for my father to find me. I thought I wasn't valuable enough for my father to come looking for me. I just thought like that's what a father would do, is just come find me. Yep. I had this dream that I would go to the league and I would have my last name on my jersey, and my pops would be watching TV and say, "Oh, Schneeberg, oh, I remember his mother," and we, hooked up, and he would come to my game and he would want to reconnect. That was a fantasy that I had. And in the book, I talk about how I've shared that with many young people, and they say I had the same exact fantasy. But what I would say is that you do have value. You have value whether your father's in your life or not. Your father and your mother's decisions don't have anything to do with your value. You are valuable. You're created with purpose, and you are valuable. And the other thing I would say is that if you haven't connected with your father in a while or had that conversation with him, you don't yet know his side of the story. And oftentimes there's kind of two sides of the story. And I hope you have an opportunity to hear your father's side of the story, because oftentimes there are circumstances and situations that arose that led to him not being available. In my case, my father fought in Vietnam, came back, it had a tremendous effect on him, on his mental health. And so he, in a lot of ways, couldn't be that father that I wanted him to be at the time. You don't know what led, unless your mother has told you in great depth, or your father has told you all maybe the trauma that your father went through. You don't know if your father's father wasn't there. You just don't know. And so I would encourage you to ask those questions, have those conversations. I would encourage a young person, man, to one, forgive your father, forgive your mother, love yourself, love your mother, honor your mother. You know what I'm saying? If you're being raised by your mother, honor her. She's doing the best she can. And then make a commitment that whether your father's in your life or not, some of you, your father might be passed like mine. Make a commitment that you're the cycle's gonna stop with you. Things will change with your generation, that you're gonna be that father that you always wanted to have. You know what I'm saying? And it starts with valuing your education. You know what I'm saying? Doing well in school. You know what I mean? And then the last thing I would say is seek out, for single mothers, seek out good, healthy male role models for your children. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's in sports or church or, you know, in your neighborhood, because young men need to have healthy, or their uncles or whatever, they need to have examples that they could see and emulate. And so that's what I would say, James.
Reverend. I got away all the whole time without calling you Reverend. Yeah, it was just amazing to have you here. I think this is one that's folks are gonna tap into and share, and have folks sit and watch often, because this is at the, and I love how you talked about that, at the root of a lot of our young men's issue. They may not ever articulate it, but the ambiguity around not knowing, or even if they do know, um, a lot of the root is around not having the father involved. And so many nuggets here today, bro. I really appreciate you. I pray God's exceedingly abundantly blessings on you, man. White House is one thing, but you know, and if they're smart now, are you still there? Because if they're smart, Uncle Joe will bring you back.
Yeah, we've had those conversations. I'm still in the DMV. We have a great church down here. My kids are doing great. They go to Sidwell Friends, where Obama's kids.
I mean, are you pastoring?
No, I'm heading up the jail ministry at my church, but
okay.
But
you said we have a great church, so I was like, okay, did I miss that?
Oh yeah, my wife and I, we go to a great church. Shout out Agape Embassy Ministries. But this is where God has me for this season. I do go back to Boston once a month. I'm still active with Straight Ahead Ministries and working with folks to go into juvenile facilities like Hillside. And so we have a Boston office at Tremont Temple. We just opened up. And so, Jimmy, when I come to Boston next, I'd love to hook up, grab some Java with Jimmy.
Yes, sir.
And, man, thank you so much for this opportunity. I encourage folks, get the book, INeverMetMyFather.com. I'll sign it for you. I think there's some good stuff. And if you know someone who you think could benefit from the book, a young person, a young man, a young woman, an older man, an older woman, go ahead and get them a copy as well.
You know what? I just had an idea. Depending on your schedule, when you come back, it might be or maybe not next month, but maybe a couple of maybe somewhere in June. We can probably do maybe a live Java with Jimmy, with you and maybe a couple of other folks, and really, and then you can be the host. I'll be one of the guests, and maybe another guest, and we can have this conversation. I know I'm setting myself up, but I'll have plenty of tissue. And so I think that'll be good if we could maybe think about doing that in June. You can do a book signing and whatnot. That would be awesome, bro. I appreciate you, man, so much. And yeah, I don't really have anything else to say outside of I love you, man. Proud of you, appreciate you. And I look forward to doing something face to face with this, where we can bring some folks together and have this conversation. Because I think in that room, there'd be a lot of healing to take place that day. So
I would love that. I would love that, Jimmy. And thank you for using your gifts, walking your purpose, man. Thank you for sharing your platform today.
Yes, sir. Thank you, bro. Folks, don't forget, INeverMetMyFather.com. And then you can also email Eugene directly at Eugene@fathersforward.com. I will be in touch with you, sir, about this idea, and then we'll go from there.
Peace. Thanks so much.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Take care.
Everyone, this was probably one of the most, and I say that often. I know I do. I'm sorry. But you know, it was definitely a privilege and honor to have this brother in the room today. Made me turn red and cry. But the lack of, or sometimes not the most healthiest relationship with our father as a man, it has an impact. And it has a huge impact. So I appreciate this time that we had with him. I am going to get ready to wrap up. I appreciate all of you all being in the room today. I agree, Miss T, this would thank all of you that are in Straight Ahead. Sharon Cornelius, if you talk old school ministry in Boston and founding and stuff, Sharon Cornelius has been around. Let me not mess up. Sharon Cornelius has been in the vicinity for a while. And knows a lot about upstarts and ministries here in Boston. Sharon Cornelius, if that will save me. This brother's still in and make that. So here's the link, you guys. You're in the comments. There is the link. It's I presume it's hypered. So you can click right there and go get the book. I can't obviously do it here on screen. And I'll probably break down and get my paperback copy and not wait on the electronic, but I'm also probably going to donate some books at this event. We'll figure it out. sometime in June, and have a panel with Gene, a Java with Jimmy, like fatherhood panel, something. I don't know. All right. Thank you all so much for being in. My sister is in the room, recuperating and feeling better. Good to see you in the room, Misha. Kelly, thank you. Two things I need to address. I forgot what the first one was that quick. One thing I need to address. There was some commenting in the comments yesterday, caught wind of it late. Some of you all text me. Kelly, you was responding here. I would just say that I had an inbox exchange with the young woman that was commenting yesterday, and made aware that I don't delve into those type of things. Will always, if pulled upon, to help, liaise and conversations and whatnot. But this is a platform where if there's any fussing or calling out or whatever that's going to be done, I will do it. And so I just wanted to name that. And thank you all that reached out and text yesterday and just check in. I was cool. I did talk to a couple of folks. So our guests tomorrow are Yahaira Lopez and Domingo De Rosas that will be here talking about methadone mile. And so y'all saw what it was, and I addressed it. So the last thing I want to do, and she's not in the room because she's down at the State House being a wonderful state employee. Shout out to the state employees, the staffers that are putting a union together so they can get their proper pay and things like that. And I missed a lot of comments this morning. I'm scrolling. But Rachel Clinton's birthday is today. And so we need to shout out Rachel. I'll tell her that she can go back at the hour mark, but y'all do me a favor and put Rachel's, say happy birthday to her in the comments there. And here is another link that's in the comments for you all. Oh, Rachel, wait. She is here. Well, how come I didn't see you commenting earlier? Not that you have to, but usually you're in the room. So y'all, please do me a favor and wish this young lady a happy birthday. Put the cakes up, put the hands up. Rachel is a charter member, part of the team. And yes, I am excited about her birthday. So excited. Good to see you in the room, Rachel, this morning. Thank you for having the keys and always doing what you do to make sure that we have information. I asked for a link or whatever. Rachel does it. Miss T is catching up with her. Shout out to Dina, who just purchased the book. Thank you. Oh, wait a minute. That's the wrong one. Where you at? I thought I saw. There she goes. She just purchased the book. Good to see you in, big sis. But thank you all so much for saying happy birthday to her. Stephanie, good to see you in the room. Miss T, thank you. I did. I didn't see it. Rachel, they're lit today. So sorry. But no, happy birthday, sis. Good to see you in the room. Rachel is all of 21 years old today. Anyway, thank you all so much for being here. Today's Wednesday. Tomorrow, Yahaira Lopez and Domingos De Rosas will be with us. Tay, good to see you in the room. My brother Eric, hopefully you got to see today's full episode. If you didn't, bro, go back and watch. It was amazing, except the tears part. All right, that's it for me. Thursday, Domingo and Yahaira. Tomorrow, well, I'll make the announcement tomorrow, but yeah, we'll talk to you guys tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. And here is the link again, or a different link. Oh, it's on Shopify as well. We got all the options up here. So far, I see 3 different options for you to go and purchase the hard copy. And Gina's saying not yet, but would love to get it there. If you have a connect, maybe we can request it. All right. So y'all are doing your own networking and up here. We'll keep you abreast of the date when Brother Gene will be back, and we'll have this face-to-face panel around fatherhood. All right, everyone. Thank you all so much. And we'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Peace. It'd be nice if I had the video queued up and ready to go.